Right, so I'm John. What I'm going through tonight is supposed to be what I did at the PMO conference, where I don't know if anyone's been to a PMO conference. It's slightly more formal than this. It's more on the level. There's less kind of uppy stuff at the back. There's more people in the room, so it's less intimate. And it tends to be more sort of PowerPoint focused. So there is some PowerPoint here. I should also point out that at the time I had a laptop that was dedicated to some robot stuff, that I actually had the presentation and the robot stuff on that I don't have anymore. So this afternoon I was frantically trying to rebuild the bot and remember how it all worked. So we'll see how that goes. I think it all works. I was testing it on the train back from Oxford, so it should all be good. So there is a formal presentation bit. There is some live demo for that sense of danger. But don't worry about it being formal. This is a small, intimate group. We're all PMO people trying to make the world a better place and enable organizations to deliver stuff better. So treat it as a friendly chat over a glass of wine. Do feel free to ask questions and get engaged, because that's what makes these sessions so good. Right, so this is it, the realities of robotic process automation in the PMO. Who's using RPA in their organization anywhere? Oh, we've got a few yeses over there. Sorry, these three are new PMO interns at Ticketmaster, which is where I've been working. So yes, they definitely are using it, whether they like it or not. What are we using it for over this way?
Within my financial services client, onboarding, so non-personal onboarding activities.
Yeah. So
just trying to streamline the process and make it more efficient.
And at your place?
So it's transferring data from one place to another to stop people having to re-key it in, kind of stuff, real simple stuff to begin.
Well, and it's a great place to start with it. So best way of describing RPA, I guess, if you run a process that you can actually sort of document as a process with process boxes, next, and some rules around it. If as part of that process you need to click things, double click things, type things in, read data from somewhere, scrape data from something else, any of those kind of things, if that's what a process looks like, you can automate it with RPA, and we'll go through a little bit of what that looks and feels like. Now, I got excited about this a few years ago because it sounded interesting. I was thinking, this would be really good for the PMO, because we do quite a lot of pulling data out of various systems and trying to make it into reports and trying to share information with people. And I played around with it, and I went to a meetup. It doesn't exist anymore. It was an RPA meetup thing in London. And I remember it vividly because there was somebody who stood up. He was a program manager, a well-known, I don't like mentioning company names. It was a well-known mobile phone company based in Newbury. And he was really excited about RPA and how they were using it in their contact centers to streamline a lot of those processes, make things faster, better, more consistent, more predictable, less mistakes, less human error, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is great, because I've heard about it from the salespeople, but I'm hearing about it from a real project and program management professional. So when he finished his talk, I kind of went and queued up with a few people that were queuing up to speak to him, and the queue was a bit big, so I sneaked off, got a glass of wine, came back and carried on. And when I got to him, I said, this is amazing, I'm really excited about it, but I have a question. How are you using it on the program? I was like, oh, and he sort of talked for a bit, and I sort of realized he wasn't quite getting what I was saying. So I came back to it again. I said, well no, but the process of running the project, how are you using it on the project to make project delivery better or higher quality or better assured, all those kind of things? Oh, well, we're not really doing that. It's really for the contact centers. And it kind of blew my mind that they'd got this amazing tool that they'd actually sent somebody out to a meetup to talk about how amazing it was, and they hadn't decided to play around with it in their PMO space. And I thought, do you know what, someone needs to play around with this in a PMO space. And I got excited, and then I saw the cost of it, and it was scary. They were using something called, it was Pega Systems they were using, and I've no idea what their cost model is now, but at the time, they would start talking to you if you would buy 8 bots off them. Now, as a guide, what the vendors tend to say is, one bot can do the work of, depending on who you ask, 5 to 7 people. So I was sitting there going, okay, firstly, these things aren't cheap, and secondly, if I need to buy sort of 8 of these and each one of them can do the work of 5 people, I'm looking at my PMO and I've not got a PMO of 40. So the odds of me getting a return on this investment are slim to none. And I sort of kind of gave up on it and wrote it off at that point. Until about a year later when another email landed in my inbox about RPA and said you should look into this. And I pinged them and I said, well, I was basically told them what I just said. And I then sort of went down the road of looking at a couple of other tools, Automation Anywhere, Uipath, and a few others, who seem to have a slightly different model. Now, firstly, the cost had gone down across the board anyway, but I ended up playing around with Uipath a lot because it was free to play with, and is free to play with if you download their community edition. They had some really good online training if you don't mind sitting there and watching videos. So Uipath, letter U, I, path. And that was the one I ended up playing around with. I'm going to talk about that one a lot tonight because it's what I've played with and it's what I understand. That does not mean it is the best one for any organization. There are lots of others out there. There's Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, Pega are still around as well. So there's lots of others doing this kind of thing. So when I'm talking about this, don't go away thinking that I'm trying to sell a Uipath. I'm not. I don't work for them. I have no affiliation with them. And don't go away thinking this is the only thing to use. It's purely the one that I happen to have been playing with a lot. And I did play. I played around, and we had a situation in the company I was working at where they suddenly had one team that was around GDPR time. Did anyone get involved in GDPR preparation projects? A few of those. And you were braced for emails and requests that would be coming in on the day the whole thing went live. Well, the company I was with at the time sort of had an estimation of how many requests they get a day. And to be fair, they were kind of right on that. As things settled down, that was about what they got every day. They'd actually forecast it pretty well. Except that first day was no ordinary day because there was so much press and media around it, so much hype and excitement, not just in the UK, but in the rest of Europe as well. And if you're a company that spans the whole of Europe, that's an awful lot of people suddenly waiting for that day to say, please remove my data. And this team, who had planned to work off an Outlook mailbox that they'd share between them, suddenly got inundated with emails in numbers that they couldn't possibly cope with the model they had. And PMO got called into that one as a bit of a sort of blitz project of how can we solve this one. And I found myself flying out to Sofia and starting a contact center in Sofia to try and deal with it because that was the only multi-language place we could find that we could quickly spin up a desk that had the languages we wanted. And then we had to look at how we could go back to some people because some of the data we'd had through wasn't quite how we wanted it and didn't quite scale. So we had to email a whole lot of people back and say, can you just give us a bit more information? But we had to respond in their language. And luckily I'd been playing around with this tool and thought, actually, I wonder if we can take some of the load off with this. And I played around with it and we found we could. And after not much sleep, and a serious nerd session with it, we were able to respond to an awful lot of people in their own language, because we'd got it to look at the language the email was sent in, respond in that language, and ask further questions, get an email back, make sure it had that, and only if it got that back would it then go and log it onto a proper contact center application, which would then be processed by one of the team in Sofia that was stood up to ready to deal with these things. And after that, I kind of saw the value of it and was quite excited about it. So I was then looking for opportunities to use it in the organization. There's a problem with funding. PMOs don't tend to be the first place people look at to put a big investment of money into. So the clever PMO manager or portfolio manager looks for those little windows of opportunity. If you're a portfolio manager and you see the money across all of the projects, you've got that opportunity to see where there are opportunities to maybe move some onto the projects that you'd like to get done. And towards the end of last year, that's what happened. So we managed to squirrel a little bit of money away just to do a proof of concept. I'd never be allowed to do that purely PMO, obviously, but what we did was looked at a few business processes where there were problems in the business. Can we do a proof of concept with them, impress the business, and at the same time get the tool that I really want to use within my PMO? That was my kind of mini mission on this one. So we succeeded. We built a solution for the business. We had a tool that basically allows you to, if you imagine if one of you is going to a concert, You can't go anymore, I need to refund your ticket. No problem, I can do that, one click. Now supposing I've got an entire stadium and we're cancelling the event, and it's still a one-click process. I haven't got an option of all, I've only got one. That suddenly gets very, very painful very quickly in an organisation where you have to hire people to refund one at a time for events. That was a situation we were in one market for the company that I was working with at the time. And we automated that with RPA. So if they had that problem of an artist cancelling an entire stadium, we could get now a couple of bots that could work 24/7 and go through each of those orders, check the payment was done with something that wasn't cash, because they're good but they're not that good. They're not about to walk up somebody's house and hand them euros yet. But they'd go through it, check that, check whether it's something they were allowed to refund through various rules that they had, would go through the process of refunding it, and then produce a nice jaunty report, as it turned out one day at about 4 in the morning, saying, I've done, here's all the ones we've done, here's the ones that were left over because they're weird and I can't deal with them. And there were things like where people have done part on a credit card, part cash, or various other things that it couldn't deal with. So we did that with the business. And what we've done after that is gradually tried to build up a practice of RPA that lives inside the PMO, but serves the business and helps them with processes that they're building out, as well as simultaneously working on our processes within the PMO and working on getting those simpler and making those work. So that's my kind of background on this. Now, there's a few things that you're probably thinking. You're thinking, why on earth is that a PMO thing and not a business thing? We will come on to that. But the only other thing I've mentioned, who here is or has got people in their PMO called analysts? Nobody? A couple, okay. And what do our PMO analysts do generally? Copy and paste. Copy and paste. What did we hire them to do? When we wrote that down, when we started JD and we wrote the title analyst down, what were we kind of envisaging those people would do? And analyze stuff. We literally put it in the job description. We want them to analyze things. And it's depressing and painful that we bring these people in with the belief that for them, they're going to analyze amazing data and make the world a better place. For me, as a projects professional, hoping that they're going to be the ones that will uncover that little gem that helps give me that early warning that Project Z is going to go hideously wrong in 4 weeks' time. But thanks to my analysts, we've had that early warning. We know how to fix it and it never happens. That's exciting. That's what analysts should be doing. And instead, we have them cutting and pasting, generating reports, discussing whether it's in the company Pantone and all those kind of things that we end up having to do. So if we could offset some of that work to the bots, we might be able to use our analysts for real analysis, which is what they want to do, and it's what we want them doing as well. So lots of reasons for doing this. And what I want to give you is a really simple scenario, and it's this one, a common PMO process, taking a load of project manager weekly reports, going through them, pulling key data out of them, putting that into a PowerPoint deck, and emailing it to the exec team. Anyone got similar processes they have to do? Yeah, weekly, monotonous, painful, good use of our analysts. Not weekly over there. Daily? The other way, monthly. Two weekly. Is that fortnightly or bi-weekly in your company? Kind of goes with the weird bi-weekly thing in mind, which always makes me twitch, but there we go. Okay, so we've got this process that would sort of run once a week. The project managers do their reports. Obviously, they're all in on time, naturally. Then there's the reading of those reports. There's extracting that. There's a whole lot of chasing there, but kind of ignoring for the moment. We need to pull key data out of them. What's the project name? Was it red, amber, or green this week? What were the highlights? Maybe that's probably all we want to put in the report we're rolling up. We need to create the summary slide using a nice template. There's probably a bit of quality checking that we need to do to make sure that's right. And then we need to communicate that out to people, which basically means hit send on an email attaching it to it. So if you look at that, there's a real automation opportunity in the middle there. If our reports are in a vaguely consistent format, that if we're good PMOs, we would hope they are, then could we get a bot to read the report, extract key data, and create that slide for us? Sound good? Let's see if it works. Now, you saw the timing on there. You look at that and think, actually, that sounds like a long time. Half an hour just to get the reports together, half an hour to analyze them. it really does take that long on a Friday afternoon, because Friday afternoons are a very distracted time. You're half doing the report whilst you're being asked a million different questions by people who really want to get out at 4 o'clock and go to the pub. And every time that's happening, you've got that context switching going on. And before you know it, it really has taken that amount of lapse time for them. So we're looking at seeing if we can save that time for them. And to do that, we should be able to do a live demo, I think. Right, hang on, here we go. Let's not put that too near the laptop. Doing a live demo is enough risk for one day, I think. Right, okay. Now what I want to show you here, actually I'm just going to switch this back onto one screen view for a minute. Display settings, one screen, so I'm seeing what you're seeing. Extend. Show, duplicate, there we go, duplicate screens, keep changes, magic, there we go, so far so good. Right, okay, so this is what Uipath looks like if you are developing bots, and it doesn't look that scary, which is quite nice. So what we have is a tool that is not dissimilar to Visio in some ways. You've got a load of different things over here. You can drag them onto your board here and you can start building out processes. So this is our process. We're going to read some emails, we're going to extract some data from them, generate some reports, and because we're feeling fairly gung-ho, we're actually going to skip that quality check entirely. You saw up there, I said, actually, we're not going to do, the automation is that middle bit, and then we quality check and we send out after we're happy with it. For the sake of demoing today, I've actually said, well, we'll skip the quality check and we're going to send, because we're feeling quite bullish because we've had a glass of wine and we're feeling adventurous. Now, in each of these sections, you've got the task that it's going to do. So read the Outlook messages. It's going to delay for a second because that is fast. And then it's going to minimize Outlook for us. In the next one, it is going to start extracting data. So there's various bits it's going to pull from reports. Let me just show you these reports quickly. So I've got 3 reports here. These are real-ish reports that have been anonymized to save anyone's embarrassment. But basically, these all follow a standard format. There is the name of the project at the top. They've got highlights from their project there. The RAG status is there in that sentence there. And going down it, they've got various other bits of information there. And they've got statements of what they've been doing this week. And then they go into detail of what they're doing next week. And then below that, there's risks and issues and all of those kind of things. And each of these reports follows roughly that kind of format. I'm just going to turn all these to say I've not read any of them yet. We're going to get our bot to read those for us. So,
can I ask a question? Can it equally do that if the report was submitted in Excel, for example?
yes,
It just opens up Excel and reads the report.
it will be opening Excel in just a minute, so you'll see it do that. So I'll read those. It then pulls information out of them. So it's getting the project name. Just here, what it's doing is basically reading the subject, the subject of the message, and it's splitting that because it knows they're in a standard format where project report is always at the end. So it splits it by the word project. The stuff before it is the project name, and that's kind of how that works out. So that bit's getting a project name for us. It then goes through the body of the email, and it's looking for various cues that tell it it's hitting the RAG status line. It's hitting the highlight sections lines. And further down, what we've got it to do is, now this is something that came up when I think Lindsay spoke earlier about another meetup group. So there's another meetup group that Martin Paver runs that seeks to do very clever things with project data analytics. They're quite focused on the construction industry at the moment, but their vision is very, very simple. If we can pool together or get enough trust between companies to share project data, are there patterns there that we could learn from that would help us improve the way we deliver projects in the future? Which is a great and exciting concept. They've got a regular meetup in London, but they also do something called Project Hack, where they get together for weekends. They've done 3. They've got their 4th one. I think it's in October.
12th and the 13th of October.
As if by magic. There we go. 12th and 13th of October. Yeah. And the bar works. I still remember the hangover from last year, from last time. But what they do, it's fascinating because they get together a group of data scientists, people who love coding, and real PMO people into a room. There's a number of challenges that organizations bring, and they're only really allowed to bring challenges if they put up some data as well. So it's not just enough to say, I'd really like. It's like, well, bring us some data in. We'll get it sanitized, but let everyone play around with the data. So they're doing those kind of experiments with that as well. And I was in a team with Eileen and others, and we played. Sorry. Yeah, we came third, which was fabulous. So well done us. And we played around with a little bit of the RPA in that. And one of the things that was explored there, because it was a Microsoft venue and they were pushing Azure services quite hard, we were looking at some of the things that could do. And we came across this idea of sentiment analysis. The idea being you could take a block of text, and actually if you get that into the sentiment engine that Microsoft has, it could assess that text, and it could pull out what the gist of it, what it's all about as a summary for you, but also it can tell you whether it's overly negative or positive on a scale of -1 to 1. So that sounded quite nice. We played around with that there. I haven't got the license from that anymore, but I quite like the idea of wondering and seeing, could we take maybe the this week section out of the weekly report and see if it's overly positive or negative, and would that help us as well as a RAG report? Just an idea, just an experiment. We tried a bit of it on that weekend, and this afternoon when I was building the bot out, I thought, let's put that into the bot as well and see what that comes back with. Now, I have not got the Azure passes that we had on those weekends, so I didn't connect it up to that, but I cobbled something together. So I found a website, this one, that has a sentiment analyzer in it. So we've got in there, I'm sad, depressed, and angry about my project. It's not in a good place. Nothing about it is good. I'm thinking of quitting my job. Sentiment analysis on that one, -100. Okay, that sounds about right. I am delighted and excited to be talking at Flash Mob. It's Brill. Please be positive, please be positive. Hang on. I'm really hoping it just hasn't picked up that I changed the wording. This was given much better scores earlier. Okay, let's ignore its rubbish for a second. But the point is, what I thought we'd get the bot to do was go into this website, paste the this week section in, look for that sentiment number on the right hand side, grab it, and throw that into our reports as well, so we could see if that was something interesting for us. So that's what the bot does later on. So we have a bot that's going to go through that process. It's going to read information. It's going to open up that website a few times to look at that and get those numbers for us. And then it's going to go and do the next bit that we want doing, which is open our PowerPoint up. Well, actually, it's going to put it into Excel first, because everyone likes Excel. It gets it into Excel, then cuts and pastes the data it's thrown into Excel into PowerPoint, into a table. Then, because we want our PowerPoint to look right, it gives it a heading, it puts the date on it, it saves that file with a meaningful title for us, and we all know the format we like. We like it to be 2019 year, month, day, and the right format, so it all organizes neatly. So we get that right, and then we're going to email it to ourselves. So that's kind of the plan of action. We're ready? I was hoping it'd go well, but that just threw me a bit, so who knows. Okay, it's an adventure. Right, here we go. We're going to start without debugging, because we've got a real sense of danger about us. And here we go. So what it should do is read those emails for us. Lovely. They've all gone to now been read. It'll minimize that. It's done the analysis stuff very quickly, and it's going to this website now. It's pasted stuff in. Oh, that's working again now. That one's got 44 apparently. That one's a positive report. Happy days. Our next report, let's have a look at this one. Pasted that one in. Yeah, I'm not confident that site's very good. I'm blaming the site, not my tool. 20. Wow, that one's very happy. 99.9%. Super happy report apparently. So once we've got it, paste it into Excel. There's your Excel pasting, cutting and pasting. We're going to go into our PowerPoint deck, paste it into our table there. We need to add a title, project roll up, front page as well. Let's add one of those. Put the date on there. Save it with our right format. There we go, lovely. Close it all down, and in the background it's going to email it to us, and that's the process finished. So what I should see certainly in my outbox there, it takes a while to send my email, but you can see there's an email there that's been sent. It's already sending it, but you can just see there, here's this week's project rollout report, have a great weekend, and it's attached it to it, and that's gone. So that'll probably arrive in my, there it is, attached, lovely, and there's the report with the right heading on it, the right date on there, and it's pulled the information from our reports with those sentiment scores. 2 of those, they're all positive, which is great. 1 apparently is super positive, bit suspicious of that one, but there we go. And if we had confidence those sentiment numbers were worth anything, that would be quite useful for us. That's a whole different discussion. But for right now, all we were trying to do was show the bot can do that kind of thing. So not just pulling together that information, but also going out to different websites, going out to different sources. If you imagine that in your organizations, it might be that it's not just looking at the report that's come in, it might also be going out to your risk tool and looking at the risk scores out of that and putting those together. It might be then doing some maths around multiplying those based on the leveling you have of which ones are your really important projects and which ones you don't really care about, and doing some of that work. But that's the kind of thing that we're looking at RPA doing in the PMO space for us. Have we got any questions about how that worked or what all that was about?
In the old days, we used to call them macros. Effectively, it was just a...
Absolutely, yes. Although, be careful saying that's for RPA people. They tend to get a bit upset when you look at it and go, isn't that just macros? They get very, in fact, do it. It's funny. I highly recommend it. Yes, it is very much like macros. It makes stuff, it's repeating those, it's getting those repeatable processes and getting the computer to do them. I'd say the big difference with this is it breaks out of using Excel. I've had people in the PMO who are absolute gods with VBA and macros and Power Pivot and linking it into Power BI, to the extent that I sit there and I go, I really don't understand what you've just done. And they will use that tool to the limits of what it's there for and then beyond. When you start getting into trying to use something in Excel to send emails out, and when you start getting these macros that seem to run for about 4 hours, crunching up somebody's machine, you start thinking it's not quite the right tool for the job. Now, what I love about this is, firstly, it's got the flow, which is nice and simple. You don't see that in a macro. It's very simple to understand how it's working, which is good. The interfaces with applications are quite nice. So I can use that, as you saw there, I connected to a random internet website and pulled information back from that and matched it in with some of my internal data. You can do that with linking your Oracle system to your SAP system to your project server. And
passwords and logins and things like that to be able to go into that system and check the data.
Yes, so if you were using it in a grown-up way, the choices are, for this, so I think they all work the same way. If you have it running on one machine, then that would be in the Windows credential locker on the machine. If you've got a server side, then the server side would encrypt those passwords and would pass them to the bot when the bot needs them to be doing that work. So the bot would have its own account, which is then fully auditable as well.
Last question.
Yeah.
What does this mean for our lovely PPM providers?
I would say it should be a wake-up call. I don't think it's an immediate threat to the tools that are out there, but what I would say is, I think a lot, if you walk around an event like Project Challenge, the last few years I've walked around, there's been some interesting stands that are trying to do new stuff, but there's an awful lot of stands that are still trying to sell me a tool that's wrapped around a Gantt chart that now does a bit of agile stuff as well. Look, we've got Kanban and everything, but that's not all. We've got a document storage system and we've got a communication tool. And that's great if you're a company that doesn't have that stuff already, but everyone has that stuff already. Everyone has a document management system, be that through 365, through Box or whatever it is. There is somewhere in the organization where documents are routinely stored that isn't a PPM tool. They will have a chat thing, be it through 365 or Slack or something like that. Why do we need another one purely for projects? And it kind of inflates the prices, and it's a whole load of stuff that we don't tend to use. So I think these kind of ideas should be a challenge and should get people thinking, because what this does, where I've used clarity in the past, I got rid of clarity in an organization, not because there was anything wrong with clarity, except that I was paying 80 grand a year for what had ended up being a glorified timesheet system. And we couldn't get around that because nobody has the skills to code it unless you buy an expertise from clarity at a very inflated rate. And even then, by the time you code these things up through a waterfall project, the world around you has changed. And that's the best case scenario, you're changing it. The worst case scenario is you kind of then organize the business around the PPM tool because it's too expensive to change it. And then everyone hates the PMO because you're the ones that are holding everyone back. Hiya.
Thank you. You've saved me 1.5 hours of my work now. So I'm leaving it till 5 to 5 to press that button on the Friday afternoon.
Cool.
How reliable is it going to be?
Well, firstly, I recommend you do it at 4 because then you can get to the pub. Reliability, it depends, which is a fairly rubbish answer, and yet it is a very good answer. So that there I built this afternoon on the train up to Oxford and back from Oxford. Reliability-wise, it's rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. If I would suspect if I had PowerPoint, if I'd run it with the 2 screens extended, it might have tripped over itself when it got to the website bit, because the website might not have looked quite the same as it was expecting. If I had multiple spreadsheets open, it might have tripped over. If Excel had opened and thrown up a message saying, "Hi, guess what? I've got new updates and we should do them right now," it'd go, "Ooh," all those kind of things. Now, none of that is insurmountable, because where you've got business, so where we've got some real business processes running at the moment, you have rules around all of those things. Do this. If it throws an error, then look at what error it is. If it's this error, okay, that's not a problem. It wants an update. Then go through this process of updating it, close it down, open it again, and you're good to go again. So you start building up those kind of error handling processes in the tool and telling it how to respond if an error occurs. If a box pops up it doesn't recognize, if it's looking for something and it's not there. So you can get them pretty robust. If you're looking at something where you've got a server looking after 2 or 3 of these bots, you can have a central queue of jobs to do, and it will pass them to a bot. If the bot doesn't complete it, it can pass it to another machine to try it, and you can set it to retry however many times you want before it fails, and then send you an email. So as robust as you have the time and desire to kind of do with it, to be honest. What we found, if anyone's sort of embraced agile delivery, where you deliver sort of thin slices of technology, that's kind of what you do with this. You build something like I've just done there, that's a veneer of what you want it to do, that's kind of good enough to get you going, and then expand from there. Now we've got the basic use case worked out. Let's go for the tricky ones. Let's put in scenarios where we have people that have different project names. Let's have something that now picks up the program reports and handles those and recognizes those. Let's now look at actually what we do about getting it to email everyone and ask who's buying the fruit for Monday morning for the office, because it's doing this. That seems to be the next natural bit to expand it into. So you start with thin slice and then build it out. And at each step you're going, do we add more quality resilience into this so it will restart itself and do all those things? Or do we want it to do more useful things for the business and we'll take the hit on the quality and accept it might break 2 or 3 times because it's only running on my machine, I can just restart if it goes weird.
So you mentioned a point there about almost kind of a central job handler and kind of remote horsepower.
Yeah.
So you configure the jobs, this type of thing here, on the central system, and it will just go, oh, you're not busy, that's your job, oh, next one's going to that one, and the next one. So that, and it will do that, it will handle those jobs and the job allocation.
If you're scaling it, yeah. So what I've shown you is one machine doing it by itself. Yeah. If you're doing it if you were doing something at scale, you'd build out the code much like that, but you'd be saying to it, okay, grab the next job from the server. So you start it off saying, you'd probably have 2 processes running. One saying, okay, so you've got whatever the input is. There's 50,000 orders in a system, or there's a whole queue of tickets in Zendesk, or whatever your contact center system is, or something like that. What I want you to do is grab those, queue them on the server, and the server will look and see which bots are available, and it will assign them jobs. And each time the bot finishes, it will go, next job, please, and they'll go through those. And you could have as many of those as you wanted off the back of that. company these guys are at have got 2 running at the moment. I'll divvy work up between them. Right, I've no idea how we're doing for time, boss. Am I good? Oh, sorry.
Where did you put the scheduling? So if you want to run it at like 4 o'clock on a Friday or whatever,
It's something to look at if you decide to go into this and consider tools, because Uipath doesn't let you schedule if you've just got one of these. It does it on the server side of things, which is annoying because you need the server element to do scheduling for it. So look at that in your criteria if you're choosing products, because I found that very painful. Now I have a server, it's not an issue for me. The server does, you do the scheduling on the server. So you might sort of look at this, and when I tell you stories about doing this elsewhere in the organisation outside of the PMO, people start to get a bit twitchy and go, well, hang on a minute, aren't you outside of your remit there? Is that really what the PMO meant to be doing? Aren't you getting a bit ahead of yourself when you're suddenly talking about building out this capability in the PMO that's kind of looking at business processes outside it? And this is where I want to segue into just this a little bit, because this is my view of what PMOs should be about. There's a lot of debate, joking aside earlier, about whether your PMO is project or program or portfolio, and actually what that means to you as an organisation and where you fit within it. And I've argued for a while that actually the only real definition of a PMO should be as a catalyst for the organisation, a team that basically works within the organisation to accelerate delivering the right things. Emphasis on the right things, not just accelerate everything, but accelerate delivery of the right things. And if you look at the PMO through that lens, this, by the way, anyone did biology at school or chemistry or a few. This is basically what happens in an experiment with or without a catalyst involved. So the red line there is kind of, does this do a laser pointy? No, apparently not. It's not got that button. But if it did, there'd be a kind of little red thing going around. You just got to imagine it right now. So basically the red line is kind of what would normally happen with the experiment or any project or anything you're trying to deliver in your organisation. You'll get there eventually. It will happen. It needs quite a bit of energy to kind of get it going and get it moving in the right direction. What actually happens in a real chemistry experiment is there's a lot of sort of collisions and bumping or near misses that happen in this time here, and you finally deliver it a bit later than you would normally. It's not true to say if PMOs disappeared from organisations, there wouldn't be things delivered, because the organisation would survive. Stuff would still get done. The argument for a PMO, therefore, is that we get it done slightly faster with less activation energy, faster, and it takes less effort to do. That's the real value that a PMO brings. And we tend to do that purely looking at the project space. If we could get the right templates in place, the right procedures in place that help people channel their energies in an effective way that we know works in our organisation, then we're going to increase the amount of stuff that we deliver that isn't broken, and hopefully some of it is delivered earlier than it would have been without the project and the PMO team being there. So that's the kind of premise that's the kind of lens that I like to look at the PMO through. And when I look at it that way, the RPA stuff becomes even more simple and even more compelling, because this is exactly what we're doing in the PMO team and for the organisation as well. By introducing these kind of capabilities, we are making it faster and easier for the business to get stuff done. With lower activation energy, we can start with something like this on a laptop, start it with a very, very simple process that we know might break from time to time, but it's certainly no worse than a human doing it. Or you might even have somebody sitting there watching it hands off and restarting it again, maybe even that, but it might be 3 times faster than the person doing it themselves. So you're starting off with something like that, reducing the amount of energy required and getting stuff done faster. So I'd argue this fits really, really well with what PMOs are about and what we're here for and what we try and do for organizations. And it's not just in my head that we're saying that. If this is a Forrester report from 2018, nothing to do with PMOs, everything about RPA. It never mentioned PMOs in there once. But look closely at these kind of key points that it kind of draws out, and look at where these have, sorry, I know you don't like the word, but synergies with the world of our PMOs. And just to help you with that a little bit, proper governance. We like a bit of proper governance in the PMO, don't we? We're kind of governance-y people. Yes? Yes, John? Yes, John. There we go. Thank you. Next line down. Not just central control, because that sounds a bit like we're policing. We don't like policing. But down here, control and scheduling become a focus. Well, we know that as PMO people. How many times do we have to deal with multiple projects and multiple things colliding together where we're the ones saying, do you know what this needs? This needs a bit of central control and planning focus. And if we can get that stuff right, we can help the organization. And we do. So again, we're 2 for 2. These are 2 things that PMOs are really good at. It's a natural fit. And our third one there, human process knowledge is an undervalued commodity. Knowledge gaps. This is something that we, again, deal with day in, day out. If you're an enterprise PMO, you have to start thinking about how you retain knowledge in your organization. When one project finishes, you hand stuff over to an operational team. If you know you're going to start another project in that area in the future, how do you retain that knowledge to be able to run those projects efficiently? All of these things are things that PMOs are thinking about day in, day out, and they're exactly the same challenges that those focused purely on RPA are thinking about. So there's some real alignment there. And by the way, that last one there, that process knowledge and how to deal with those challenges of not losing that data. Eileen is a good person to talk about the knowledge management side of things. And for your projects, if you think about creating lessons learned repositories, gathering lessons, sharing those with the next projects, Ken in the corner there has a fantastic book on capturing, not just capturing lessons, but actually, because everyone captures lessons, but actually doing something real with those lessons and using those to propel your organization forwards. So there's 2 people to have a chat to as the Perfitter roles, which I believe is the next course that Lindsay has lined up for us out back. The challenges you hear about with RPA, you need a lot of expertise for it. You need high volumes, this idea of needing 8 bots before you start. It's expensive, and the process of doing it is kind of painful. So I just want to try and break through some of those for you, because this has been my experience of it. Going back to your macros. If you've got people in your team that can write macros, they can learn this stuff and do it. I have not been on any training courses for this, and I'm not that clever. There's some good videos online, and it's pretty intuitive. So if you've got people that can do that, they can pick this stuff up very, very quickly. It's actually a good selling point for it's good for the PMO people, for their careers as well. I mean, they're learning a skill that seems to be growing and in demand at the moment. So suddenly they're learning something that's kind of exciting and on the money in the market. Is that fair? Looking to you 3. Yeah. High volume. I've found it's less about high volume, to be honest, with where you can just get 1 bot. The community edition of this, as long as if you're a very small company, or if you're using it purely for training, development, and trying to learn it yourself purposes, it's fully functional and free of charge. It's not really about volume. It's more about having stable processes. The more stable the processes you have are, the more repeatable they are, then that's where you have the value of the bots coming into it. It's not really necessarily about the volume. You need to have a think about the systems you work with. Do they change a lot? Do they change very frequently? A few things I've been asked about. We've got this legacy tool that we're not going to update, and what we really want to do, it's very clunky. It doesn't quite give us the report we need. We have to go to here, and then to here, and then to here, and try and mesh that together. It takes forever. That's the perfect job for RPA. And one of the key reasons that's perfect is because they said one of the magic words, which is, it's a legacy, we don't want to update it anymore, which probably means it's going to stay stable, which is quite nice. It's not going to change around a lot. Somebody else said, can we look at this website and scrape data off it every morning? And for that, I said, well, I've looked at that website, and I'm going to say, let's not do that, because actually it's not very stable. That website uses multivariate testing, for example, which means depending on how they've got that configured at any given time, 20% of people are going to hit a beta version and 80% are going to hit this one. They're going to look entirely different every time. And the bots, depending on if you code it right, it will have some resilience and recover those things and figure out what it's meant to be looking for if you've anchored it all right and told it what to look for. But a lot of times that can get very tricky, and it can trip you up, and you can suddenly find you're spending a lot of time chasing after those problems and trying to constantly fix the bot to keep up with the website that you're trying to scrape stuff from. So the more it's less about volume and more about stability of process. If you've got stable processes that are consistent, then it's a good thing to try and use. Cost. So there's the free play around stuff. Entry level for a lot of this stuff is down. I think it's even down to as low as 2K now, so it's been coming down and down. There's a lot of competition in this space, and it will carry on going down. So do have a play around with it. It's not as expensive as it was even 3 years ago when I was playing around with it. And as I said earlier, don't try and look at it as an opportunity for the business rather than an expense for the PMO. If you can look at where you can bundle this idea of building up this capability whilst offering the business something tangible that saves money for the organization, then not only are you getting the tools you want, you're heroes at the same time, which is quite a nice position to be in. What's depressing about some of this stuff, and to be fair, it's not just RPA, but there's a lot of new tools, new technologies that are coming out at the moment that when you look at you say, great, that's really clever, how do we use it? And they still come back to giving you what looks like a waterfall implementation process. Or they use Kotter's change model, which I don't know if anyone's looked at Kotter's change model recently, but it was this 8-step model. They've kind of changed it and put it into a circle now to try and make it appear more agile, but it's still the same 8 steps that are kind of one after the other, despite what they tell you on their blurb. Everything still seems to be this kind of waterfall way of working. I urge you not to follow that and go with your gut instinct on it instead. This is something that you can bring in very, very small. You don't need to change the world initially. Play around with it in your team. Get that one person in your team who loves playing with new stuff and has an interest. That one person who's really been enjoying working on macros but gets frustrated when they don't quite do what they want. Get that person to have a play around with learning this stuff for free. Download the free version, play around with it, see how that goes. If you find opportunities, if they come back to you and say, actually, I've done a couple of bits here and look, the bot's doing that, I'm not doing it anymore, it's quite nice. That's great. Then you're kind of in a position where you can grow things. And start with those things that you might just be gently saying, well, I'm using somebody still overseeing it because we're not quite robust yet, but we're gradually building it out. And then moving on to simple business processes where you might even find that there's a process that you say, actually, there's a number of different scenarios. We can't possibly tackle that one because actually, yes, do you know, a lot of them will all do this, but there'll be some that go that way and some that are weird and gnarly and a bot won't deal with those. Most of the time, they're great for RPA because all you need to do is understand the rules that it's allowed to deal with. If it looks like this and smells like this, then carry on down this very simple one process that you've defined. If it looks a bit weird and smells a bit funny, boot it out to a person. Send it to somebody on an email. You're not making anyone's jobs harder because that would have gone to a person anyway. But actually, if the bot's picking up 30, 40, 50% of the ones that a person could have dealt with, you're still making it simpler. You don't have to tackle everything all at once. You don't need to buy the big projects that resellers and people will be trying to sell you alongside this stuff. So I think those were my key messages that I was trying to get across.
One question.
Yeah.
Behaviours. So it's 2 sides of the same coin. So behaviours within PMO that's attempting to see if this is a threat. Secondly, outside of the PMO, PM. By the way, you now have to get your report in by 4 o'clock on a Friday because the bot's going to do the processing. There is no, I'm just going to ring the PMO and it'll extend it back by half an hour because the bot's scheduled to start at that point in time. How did you deal with those?
On the first one, I think have we been lucky? I'm gonna say lucky. I think we've been lucky with a few things. Firstly, I have got that inquisitive person in the PMO that likes playing with stuff. That helps. I know not everybody has that. That does make a difference. And if you've got people that routinely like automating things with macros and things, then they don't see this as a threat. They see it as, oh, you're unleashing more amazing things that I can play with and make things even better. That's great. They're naturally enthusiastic about this stuff. Now, for the business, because of the way we were always using this to solve problems. And the GDPR example I gave you was we don't know how we're going to handle this volume of stuff in a very short period of time. We have a solution. We don't know how we're going to handle Drake cancelling a stadium tour. We have a solution. It's never once been about people's jobs being at risk or anything like that. It's always been actually, oh, thank goodness this has got us out of a hole and saved us doing something. And if you look at it from the other side of things, you're freeing, in theory at least, if not in reality, you're freeing people up from doing the grunt work, the boring stuff, and enabling them to do the interesting things, which means a number of things. Firstly, you've got happier people, but secondly, retention goes up. If people are doing interesting stuff, they're going to stay with your organisation. So that side of things. Project managers, quite frankly, they just need to. Well, exactly, yeah. They've got anyone seen Casino Royale? One of the James Bond movies. I think it's in that one. It's certainly one of that series where M describes Bond as a blunt tool. I think you can use that for project managers at times. We kind of have have we got any project managers in, by the way? It's all PMO people. Okay. We kind of have these people that have this amazing set of skills, but we employ them specifically to bludgeon their way through the inertia and silos we have in our organisations to get stuff done. So yeah, sometimes you do just need to tell them this is the reality and this is how you need to work now and deal with that.
Just on a sideline, so on that, we're doing a lot of work, changing a lot of stuff where we are, but we're running a behavioural change programme at the same time on everything. So if we were bringing something like that, everything we would run the two things. So the new process where it's coming in the behavioural change programme that's consulting at the moment is with it. But the two-way thing, because we're finding that if we tell people to do it, it's just like we're quite negative. Now join the two things together to try and...
That could be good. See, I've had a glass of wine. That would be a much nicer way of doing it. Yes, you do. Joking aside, you do need to take people on that journey and help them see the value of it. And
take to one side.
Yeah, well, all that. It depends on your organisation. But again, there is for the project managers, there is the trade-off there. If your PMO analysts aren't spending all of that time in admin, are they not spending more time being able to support and enable project managers doing their jobs and getting stuff delivered faster? So isn't that a nice selling point for them? That actually there's more time available to help them, assuming we make that time available for helping them, not policing and governancing them and controlling them, is the trade-off on that one. But that is certainly is the compelling selling point for it. More interesting stuff and freeing people up to help you and do the jobs they should be doing, were it not for the fact they're spending all of their time at cutting and pasting data. So there we go. I think that was me. That was kind of my rough journey, but I kind of talked through most of the key points on here anyway. And this is kind of where we are. We've got business processes live, RPO processes live. The number of certified PMO people has dropped down in this organisation because some of those were last year's interns, but it will be coming up again very, very shortly once the new crowd get themselves all certified up. And it's an established part of the PMO structure now. They're hiring an RPA developer specialist into the PMO team, working exclusively on the RPA side of things alongside the PMO analysts to build this out further for the organisation as well. So that's been our adventure. In summary, there's a whole load of PMO processes that can be automated. There is huge value in automation, making it simple and freeing up your people to do the work you hired them to do. The research that we saw from Forrester & Co. shows that actually there's a real crossover and a real synergy in the challenges in the RPA space and some of the things that PMOs have been tackling for years. So we're a really good team to be working either in partnership with teams that are rolling out RPA or actually just taking it on and doing it ourselves. And acknowledging expertise, cost, volume, processes can all be obstacles, but the solutions are present in the organisations. You can get over those in various different ways as you go forward. And that was the talky bit. Done. Shane.
Sorry if it's been asked already, but I was just wondering if there's been any instances where something's happened that you weren't expecting, maybe something's went wrong in the process, kind of.
There has been nothing that has gone wrong in the sense that it's broken something badly. The things that have gone wrong have been things stopping and not working. So if you look at that example I gave of the refunding stadium events, that doesn't happen often, which means you've got this bot that you might kind of pull out and dust off every 2 or 3 months or so. But when it happens, it has to happen very quickly, and it has to work, and it has to work at volume and work 24/7. And because of that challenge, you'll suddenly find that actually I've forgotten what bits of it did, because I've not touched it for a little while. And I might find that somebody's updated a system, which means the search function doesn't work quite the same way anymore. And it's a highly configurable system, which means they might have configured this event differently to another one. In those cases, the software doesn't go off and make assumptions. This is not some clever AI tool that's going to go out and take over the world. It will follow a process that you give it, and it is stupid. Unless you tell it to try and be a little clever and make some decisions, they're generally stupid. It will sit there on a screen, and even though I'm kind of screaming at it, it's obvious the refresh button is there, look, I can see it. It'll be going, nope, can't see it, sorry, I'm not moving on, and I'm going to throw an error for you. Because somebody either changed the logo on it, and if it was looking for the image, then it's not seeing that anymore, or they've changed the name of it, or they've changed the Alt1, Alt2 key, or however it is it's looking for that button, it suddenly doesn't find it anymore. Every problem I have had with it has been something that results in it stopping, not something that...
You don't need to go back too far, but you need to go back to the start of my working life. Because that's how my COBOL programs work. Do you know, and you think how much things have moved on since then. So to me, this, getting on board with RPA starts the right thinking, and the tools will progress and get more sophisticated as time moves on.
Agreed. Ken?
Given that the RPA system, as you said, is stupid and can't handle exceptions particularly well, and given that you put the bot together on a couple of train journeys this afternoon, to what degree did you have to dumb down the status reports that you gave it as fodder in order to make it work properly?
Those were real status reports that I have changed names of people, names of projects in using Control-H, find and replace on. They're absolutely as they come into my mailbox. Now, I did look at those and go, right, what are the patterns that I can pull from those? So cost they do, what those reports are, the way they do it, they actually have an Excel, the project managers have their, as well as their logs in Excel, so their issue log, risk log, all that kind of stuff. There's basically a macro in there, funnily enough, that will generate that report for them in a fully responsive format that works in an email. So
it was already quite formulaic.
The structure of the report is quite formulaic. So when I was playing around with it, I was looking at, right, okay, I know the project name is always in the title, so that's fairly consistent. The wording of that sentence that says the color is red, amber, or green, I know always starts with the project name and then has RAG status is. So I was looking down the report. I mean, they could have added more lines in, which is risky. So what I've got it doing is parsing the lines of the body of the text, saying look for a line that starts with project name and then contains RAG status is, and then grab the last word, which is fine. If I was making it more robust, I could actually turn around and say, is the last word red, amber, or green? If not, then flag that the RAG is unidentified or undetermined, so I'd know I have to look at that when I look at the presentation and do my quality check, for example. So I could get it to restrict on those things. When I went down it below that, I know I have sections called this week and next week. So it's going down and saying, right, when it finds a line that contains only the words this week and nothing else on that line at all, no other words around it, then that is the start of the this week section. When you hit the word next week on a line by itself and nothing else, -1 line is the end of that section. So that gives me all the text that I'm going to throw at that website and do the sentiment analysis bit on. So that was how we did that. If I'd had the time and been so inclined, I could have probably got it to pull the risks out and all of those kind of things as well.
So would you say then that the way to think about implementing this kind of thing is to scoop up, in Pareto terms, the 80% of simple cases and get people to look at the remaining 20% of difficult edge cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which is probably the bits you want your people focused on anyway.
Yeah, makes sense.
Does this require any specialised hardware, or
Nope.
you sit on a laptop, or?
That's running on my laptop. When you're getting into running business processes that might be running 24/7, you might then start to consider actually a laptop sitting around the office that's just whirring away with nobody around it is a concern for us and a security risk for us. You can then consider putting it on virtual machines, Amazon workspaces, those kind of things, and then you'd have the server in the cloud as well. But certainly initially, that's running on a laptop.
So if you're doing it that way, John, on your laptop, does the laptop have to be awake for it to be running?
Running it with just one machine by myself, yes. When you're scaling it up, and again, I'm only talking about Uipath because anyone I know, I have a couple of Amazon workspaces in the cloud that are awake all the time. The orchestrator, the server, will basically, there's a heartbeat that goes between them, and it will send messages to those machines, say, okay, right now, I'm logging in as the user. The screen resolution is set to this size, and now go away and do your thing. And when it finishes, it'll lock itself and wait for the next one to come along.
I was thinking about this today when I was playing around with it, with some of the exercises on the UI Academy. And well, when I think of it, it's essentially some program that we download on the internet to click on stuff and see stuff on the screen, right?
Okay.
I can't help but, well, on a very, very basic
Yeah, no, I'm good with that, yeah.
Right? But I can't help by thinking about the fact that we all deal with a ridiculous amount of confidential information, and even while we're using it to refund tickets to people which involves their bank account details and stuff like that. So how can we make sure that this stuff is secure and that it doesn't send it to ridiculous places or stuff like that?
It's a very good question. It depends on the tool that you're using and how you've got it set up. So stuff like this, I'm reasonably relaxed about. If you are dealing with things where you are dealing with credit card data, where you've got things that are in PCI scope, where you're dealing with customer data, you're into a very different ball game with it. So with Uipath, for example, their orchestrator platform, they have their own orchestrator platform in the cloud that you can tap into. That's not what you want to be using for that kind of data. It's the reason it's the reason your company has an orchestrator. We're getting used to that one. Is the reason why your orchestrator is hosted inside the organization. It's a reason why, annoyingly, if I wanted to use the mobile app, I wouldn't be able to, because it's only accessible within inside your organization. The data is on a database inside your organization for precisely that reason. We actually went through a whole huge amount of security hoops and working through whether this was going to be touching credit card data. If it was, what are the risks around that? And we went through that an awful lot we went through rounds of working with IT to get the application approved, working with security to make sure they were happy with the data it was touching, looking at all the contingency plans around that. How do we minimize risk? How do we give it its own account that has the lowest permissions possible? So all of that kind of stuff you do have to do. Just like you would do with anything that would be dealing with credit card data and real customer data. We didn't find anything insurmountable during that process, and these tools are used to handle financial transactions and things routinely in other environments. So yes, you absolutely need to think about it and think about it carefully when you're thinking about the processes that you want to tackle, but it's not insurmountable. Lindsay?
Back in 2017.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yeah, so 2017, when your journey, you made aware of the potential. Is this all you? Is this you driving all of this? Is this you that's made your back company go for this?
Yes.
Because you were doing this?
Yes. Is that a bad thing?
What happens when you leave?
I've left.
Good knowledge transfer.
We bring in the next generation, they've got it to a stage where they've agreed and have hired a RPA developers, so as well as the people in the PMO who've been learning this alongside macros and have started automating some of the PMO processes. What we've recognized is for some of the more detailed stuff, we still need to get assistance. We worked with a partner, a small consultancy who are London based, who deliver solutions with RPA. So we worked with them. The things they've built out for us, they still have a support built around it. So they support the bots that they've built out for us. So we've got that kind of stuff in place. But longer term, the view is that the company ends up bringing as much of that in-house and building that expertise within the PMO as they can.
So it's not that cheap.
Sorry?
So it's not that cheap then?
For those business processes, they all paid for themselves within a quarter.
What when you're hiring somebody?
Sorry?
You're employing somebody full time.
I've flipped to PMO analyst head. So I've got one less PMO analyst to pay for that. So net, there's no change to the organisation. That money's come out of the existing PMO spend. The rationale being that we were doing most of that work anyway, and we're going to move some of that. We're going to prioritise automation over some of the other things that they were doing. So the PMO impact neutral. The business cost, the projects that we did for them, all paid back.
Can I just follow up? Do you believe that, just like Agile was sort of into the consciousness of senior execs, do you think this is going to go the same way?
Sorry,
a few breakfast briefings and they'll start hearing about this and they'll start seeing what it can do and come back into the business and say, why are we not doing it? Do you think it'll go to, like a bit like Agile, yeah? It all kind of, senior execs are down, this sounds good, this sounds like it'll save the people. Do you think this will go the same way?
It almost certainly will. And I think that's where you need to go in as the voice of caution and reason on it. I hope whilst I've been standing here saying, I think this stuff's good, I think it can really help us and the organisations that we work with. And I think we, as a team that enable the business, should be getting involved in this stuff. I hope I've been a voice of caution about saying actually how you should think about playing with it, what the limitations are in terms of the weaknesses of it. You do have to train it to do everything. You shouldn't trust people when they say you need these great, big, expensive projects that look very much like waterfall with a big delivery at the end, and look at doing it small and incrementally. You do need to build up your capability inside the organisation to be able to support these tools. Otherwise, you do end up where you have been with other tools in the past. So I think that will happen with organisations, but it'll be nice that the PMO can be the one saying, actually, this is we're there.
Tier 1 bank. This AI is on the table for discussion monthly because they are driving this.
Well, there you have it.
Because you have to have the standard process.
This is not AI. Sorry.
You have to get the standardisation with the processes if you're going to automate. You have to get that level of governance you talked about, and the quality within there.
For RPA, absolutely, yes. And sorry, the point that was made at the front here, this is not AI, is it? No, this is absolutely not AI. This is automating processes with computers. Machine learning is, when people are talking about machine learning, what they're really talking about there is basically, if anyone did advanced maths at school, it's basically looking for correlations and non-linear regressions, and basically looking for patterns in data in ways that humans would either get bored doing or wouldn't be able to do as fast. But you're looking for those patterns that are basically saying, if I can show that, bringing that back to the PMO space where machine learning might get interesting if we were to dabble in that. Could we get to the stage where actually looking at our weekly reports, if we're looking at our project reports with a tool like this, what if we're not just pulling that data? What if we're taking other things out of that email as well? So what if we're looking at the time they sent that report in? We mentioned the project manager that's habitually late, for example. What if we're pulling that information and that sentiment analysis and the number of, and whatever that thing was that we did at the hackathon about how readable something is.
The Pink Club
There you go. What if we pulled all of those bits of information together and threw that into a machine learning engine, which is what we were playing around with at the hackathon? We're saying, right, if we can give it all these metrics, can a machine learning algorithm then look at, well, firstly, whether the report's quality or not quality for us, so we've got an idea of which ones we should focus on. But what if we took that further and said, actually, could we get to the stage where sort of Tesco's and people like that are at with our purchasing, the way we purchase things, and could we actually use it predictably? So there was quite famously an issue in the US with Target, which is a sort of boots type shop in the US, and there was a parent had gone in and went absolutely nuts at the manager, demanding to know why his 16-year-old daughter, who had a sort of store card, sort of card for the points on it, was getting the mail shots through that were suddenly full of baby things. And they're like, well, do you think it's appropriate? You've got her age. Why do you think it's appropriate? Suddenly giving her a whole load of suggesting baby clothes, and it's not appropriate for the age, and went nuts to them about it. Fast forward, apology, yes, because she was pregnant. But that shook Target up, because what they had looked at, their algorithms were doing, was saying, if you're going shopping and you don't normally do these things, but you suddenly start buying a bag that's a large handbag, not a normal sized handbag, but a larger sized handbag all of a sudden. And if you start, not pregnancy kits, no, nice moisturizer, but not the perfumed moisturizer. So a quality one, not a cheap one, but not perfumed. Then they were using those and saying you were very likely, not you'd be having a baby, but very likely you would be buying baby products in 4, 5, 6 months' time. So they were using that algorithm there. But that, whilst it's a bit of a scary story, it gives you an idea of what these things can do. And could we be using that kind of machine learning in the future to say, actually, Dave's report always comes in half an hour late, but that's fine because we're used to that. What's weird, Sarah always gets her report in 2 hours before deadline. Recently, her report's coming in at about 10 past, quarter past, almost right up to deadline. And actually, her reports are normally about 200 words, and they've gone down to about 100. And actually, the sentiment score has been fairly consistent and is now starting to turn a little bit. Whilst it's showing a green status, we're a little bit concerned, and the algorithm's calculating that there's a 78% chance that project's going to be amber in 2 weeks' time and red the week after that. Now, isn't that powerful for us as people running projects, that kind of early warning system that might be able to give us? So that's the machine learning side of it. AI, honestly, I couldn't tell you what AI is. I think it's supposed to, the idea is, what we envision it as being is having a conversation, the Turing test of kind of not being able to tell whether you're interacting with a human or a computer. What I'm seeing a lot of things that are being badged as AI is far more about being able to talk to a computer and have a conversation with it. So it's far more about that than it is about the true vision of this kind of Turing test stuff. Right. I don't know about you, but I need a profiterole and another drink. I am not going away. I'm merely suggesting we move to a more relaxed forum. We segue through there. I can top my glass up. Oh, sorry.
Before you go, round of applause for Trevor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.